This is Gemara in Gittin Daf Chav. Today's shir should be a continued refuah shalema for Moshe Yisrael ben Liba b'stiyata d'shmaya. The recovery should go smoothly and he should be home, fully recovered in no time. We pick it up from, we are on Yud Tes Amid Beis. Pulled up a drop short, I apologize, approximately 4 lines from the wide lines. We just said that we have a get that's written with me milit, but you can't see the words. So says the Gemara, Kikamer Shmuel, when did Shmuel say that it's going to be a good get? Is when you're badkin on the law, b'maya dinara, that you test with this violet dye. We said this some sort of makes this invisible ink come out, and palit. If the ink surfaces, then you see it's a get. V'loi palit lo lav klomu. So says the Gemara, 4 lines from the white lines. And even if you could see the text, who cares? Asks the Gemara, now is when it happened. Now is when the letter comes out. What's the question? So Rashi has an interesting take over here. Rashi says, the Gemara's understanding right now is when this text was invisible, it's not aksav. And now that it's emerging, now is when it gets a din of iksav, which is a big chiddush, but that's the Gemara's kasha. Says the Gemara, Shmuel nami chayshidan kamar. All Shmuel meant was we are chayshish that maybe there was some ksav over here. As Rashi says, what does that mean? Maybe it wasn't fully absorbed, and therefore maybe you could have seen it a little bit and to create a case of a safek. Continues the Gemara, Amlei Amimar. As Amimar, 2 lines from the bottom. Reber Mishmeder Avdimi. This Remer said in the name of Avdimi, Hanu Bei Trey. These 2 Eidim, Diav Gita Kamayu, that they gave the get in front of us. Srichi Limikraya. They need to read the get before giving it. So how are they able to read the get if there's nothing written on the paper? So that's why Ravina says we can't say that it's going to be a good get. Ravina's kasha. Says the Gemara, the first wide line, Yutasami base, Meisvei, she takes it, she throws it in the ocean, or to the fire, or she throws it into any form that is ruined. And then the husband says, Shtar Pasamu, it wasn't really a get. What was it? It was a document of persuasion. Sharamanu, Migureshes, she is divorced. And the husband is not believed, to say it was not a get, to thereby forbid her from the world. So explains the Gemara. You, Ravina, just said that you would have to read it. What do you mean? If we read it, so then we know what the paper says. So how could the husband subsequently come along and say it was a shtar pasim, it was a shtar mana, etc.? Explains the Gemara. He read it, then he put it into his sleeve, then he took it out and gave it to her. Bit of a magician's trick. So Ma'u the Tema, you know what the concern is? Chalufei. He put one paper in and maybe pulled out a different one. Kamash Malon, that is the chiddush over here, that we are not suspectful that the husband indeed did that. Says the Gemara, a new case, 4 lines from the bottom. There was a guy, he threw a get to his wife, Lebene Adani, and the paper landed amongst the barrels. And when they went to search for the get, they didn't find the get. What did they find? They found a mezuzah, a scroll. Amar Rav Nachman, says Rav Nachman, mezuzah de beni dani, loy shchicha. It's not common, and therefore, what do we assume that this really was? We assume that this rolled up a piece of paper was indeed that. So we assume that this mezuzah that they found was that which the husband gave his wife, and therefore it wasn't a get, and they're not divorced. But says the Gemara, that's if you find one scroll, one mezuzah, gimel. But if you find multiples, midahavei, midahavoi, hanami havoi, and therefore, but where's the get? Shkoyach, you found 3 mezuzahs, but where's the get? But the get will say that the rodents ate it, but will say that indeed they are divorced. So another case of a potential suffix in which the Gemara is ruling L'Maisa is going to be a get. However, there was a guy. He went to a shul. Interesting fellow. Shakal Sefer Torah. Takes the Sefer Torah. Yahev La L'Debisu. And he gives the Torah to his wife. V'amar La Hagitich. Here is your get. Amar Rav Yosef says, Rav Yosef, what in the world is going on over here? What are we suspectful of? If we're suspectful that maybe the husband wrote on the outside of the Torah with gold nut juice and you can't see it, says the Gemara, can't be, because we paskin ein meimilin al gabe meimilin, because the Torah itself, the parchment, the klaf of a Torah is already treated with meimilin, ready treated with gold nut juice. And we learned yesterday that the klal is that once something is treated, then nothing absorbs into it. So therefore, we don't have any concerns. Says the Gemara on the top of Yud Tes, on the top of Chaf Amud Aleph, and imisham krisos. And if the concern over here is krisos the isba habeina v'kasav alishma, and if you're going to tell me that, what do you mean? That there is the parsha of Gittin in the Torah, so maybe he gave her the get with the intention that the parsha of Gittin in the Torah gave her the Sefer Torah, with the intention that the parsha of Gittin in the Torah should act as the get. Says the Gemara, can't be. Why not? Because one of the fundamental dinim of a get that we already started learning and we're going to see more and more, says the Gemara is what? V'kasav la. The din is that it has to be written v'kasav la lishma. And the Sefer Torah was clearly not written lishma v'leka. Maybe going to say milechosh. Maybe this guy, before the Sefer Torah was written, he went to the Sefer and he did what? And he gave him some cash me'ikara before the Torah was written, and sold the Sefer. When you write the Sefer Torah, you should have in mind me and my wife. So this Sefer Torah could function as a get. Says the Gemara, nothing doing. Habi'inan shina shmayu shma shemi rai v'shemi ra. Critical components of a get are his name, her name, and the name of the cities, v'leka, and that is not there. So says the Gemara, so what in the world is this case? Explains the Gemara 5 lines down, Chaf Amud Aleph, Rav Yosef, and I apologize that we're having video issues. Rav Yosef might come Ashwan. What exactly is Rav Yosef's Chiddush telling me that he can't give the Sefer Torah as a get? She'ein me'milin agabe me'milin. That is his Chiddush. He's teaching us this din. We were asking, what do you mean? We learned this yesterday. That once something is treated, no other gold nut ink works on top of it. Says the Gemara, Hagufa. This is the case that Rav Yosef was teaching us. That's going to be the Chiddush. Explains the Gemara, Rav Chisda 6 lines down. Get shekasu shalai lishma. Let's see if a get that was written shalai lishma. Ve'hever alav kolnis lishma. And then what they did? They decided they wanted to make it into lishma. So they took a quill and they traced over the letters with intent for the get. Explains the Gemara, such a scenario, banal machlekes Rav Yudah v'Rabbanan. This is a machlekes Rav Yudah and the Rabbanan. Titania, we learned in our brisa that we've already seen in the Gemara in Shabbos, I believe maybe in the Gemara in Megillah as well. Someone's writing the Sefer Torah, and he's up to writing the Shem Hashem, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. But he made a mistake. V'niskavein, and his intention at that moment was Lichtov Yehuda, was to write Yehuda. And of course the word Yehuda, Yud-Hei Vav Dalit Hei, is the Shem Hashem, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, without the Dalit. With an extra Dalit, So he thought he's supposed to write Yehuda. And then, lo and behold, Vita, he makes a mistake and he v'loyet Dalid, Mamash Mazel. And he leaves out the Dalid. But now what happened? What happened is now he has a kosher Shem Hashem, but he didn't have kavanah for the Shem Hashem. So what do we do with this story? Says the Raisa, says the Rav Yehuda, Mavelav Kulmes Umekadsha Divi Rav Yehuda. You take a quill, you retrace the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei with intent for the Shem Hashem, and everything is good. Divi Rav Yehuda. Chachamim Aimrin, no, Ein Hashem Muvchar. This does not work. So suggests the Gemara, suggests Rav Chisda in our case, when I have a get that was written Shalei Lishma, and after the writing of the get, I want to be Mavir Lov Kulmis, I want to retrace the get with intent for the husband, wife, and the correct places. This should be a machlekes. According to Rav Yehuda, it should work. According to the Rabbanan, it should not. Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov, nothing doing. No, maybe this is not the machlekes. When the Rabbanan say their din that the Shem Hashem is not good, it's awesome only over there. Why? Because it's a special din when you write a Sefer Torah. Tibeina, what do you need? Zakeli ve'an vehu. It needs to be beautiful. Veleka, which works very well. What were the words of the Chachamim? Ein Hashem min hamuvchar. The words were not that it's not Hashem Hashem. It's just not the best, because you need Zakeli ve'an vehu. Meaning it's a specific din in the Sefer Torah. Aval halcha, but by Geloi, maybe the Chachamim would admit that it is indeed a good get, so the Gemara concludes that this will not be the machlek as Rav Yehuda and the Chachamim. Continues the Gemara, once Rav Chisda is talking, he tells us another din about get. Amar Rav Chisda, or about 13 lines down, the first one line is Aval Hacha. Amar Rav Chisda, know what I could do, says Rav Chisda? I can make all the Gittin in the world possible. Amar Rava, says Rava, my time. Why can you make all the Gittin possible? Because the pasuk says v'kasav v'hacha, and in the city of Rav Chisda, ihu kakas v'lei. She, the woman, used to be the one that would write the get, and Rashi points out not that she would write it, but she would pay the noisanis chara soifer. She would pay for the writing of the get. If that's the reason, again, v'dilma k'nyaknuli rabbanan. But maybe it's not a problem, because maybe the Rabbanan were makneh and made it that even though the woman paid for the get, maybe the Rabbanan consider it as if he owns it. Aknu le Rabbanan. Ve'ela, you know what the reason is? Mishum dechsev in Nasan. It says you have to give the get. And you're not giving anything. We think right now, the way the Rashi explains, that we think that was because the Torah says v'nasan, that there's a critical ingredient in Gerush and in divorce of v'nasan, of giving something. And by just giving a piece of paper with no value, it's not called you gave anything. Says the Gemara, how do you know that? Maybe when the Torah said v'nasan, it just meant you have to give the get. So therefore, what is the problem? And Teida, I'll bring you a raya, the shalch mitam kasvel asura no kosher. That you're allowed to write a get on isura no, meaning you do not need that the paper on which you're writing the get to have any value, even if one is not allowed to get any value from the paper. Maybe it's something of hektish or whatnot. Still, it's going to be a kosher get. So the Gemara concludes that there will not be a problem with these gittin. But once we quoted this case, Gufa, we continue, we're smack in the middle of the Amid. First word in line is Gufa, Shalchu Mitam, they send from there. Kasvu ali Isurei Ana Kasher. The last case that we just said, a get that is written on Isurei Ana is Kasher. Amr Ravashi, Afanami and Amitanina, I learned the same. Al El Shal Zayis, you let her write the get on an olive leaf. So the Gemara thinks that this is a proof that an El Shal Zayis, an Olive Shal Zayis, also has no value. So we see the same Yisai that you do not have to have a value in order to write the get on. As long as you're giving over a get, that's enough. Says the Gemara, no raya from the olive leaf. Why not? Because Tomashani Allah Zayis, maybe that case is different. The Chazi, Li'itzarufe. If you have enough olive leaves, eventually it will have a value. You could have 1,000,000 items of Isurei Ana, it will never have a value because every one is worth 0. But if you have 1,000,000 items worth 3 pennies, then it is. So it's not a raya. Tanya, we continue. Rabbi Omer, it says Rabbi. Kasu al Isurei Ana kosher. Nafag Levi. Levi went out to Rosh Mishnei. He didn't have Mishnei. Drasha Mishmei de Rabbi, and he darshaned in Rabbim this day, and they elaborate again in Surah in the name of Rabbi, V'lo Kol Suah, and no one praised him. They didn't think it was such a good din. But then Mishmei de Rabbim, he said over the same halacha, but this time he quoted the Rabbim, the Rabbanan V'Kol Suah, and then they praised him. So says the Gemara, very interesting. So we see that this is the halacha. So when he said it over in the name of a yachid, the name of a singular person, Rabbi, he didn't get any praise because they figured this, they thought this was halacha. But when he said it over b'shem the rabbim, then indeed they praised him. Says the Gemara, Tana Rabbanan, we're about 15 lines to the bottom. First one line is Alma Chsakavasei. And now we begin a new sugya. Tanu Rabbanan, ve'kasav, it says you have to write a get. Darshans the Gemara of Leichakak cannot be chiseled into a piece of stone. Lameimra says the Gemara the Chakika lav ksiva. Sounds like, what would the reason be? Chiseling in doesn't have a din of ksiva, doesn't have a din of writing. For Reminu, says the Gemara, I'll ask you a stira, if there's an Eved, a slave, that has a writing of a document of emancipation, like a Shechrar, that he's freed al tavla on a stone, upinkis, or on a tablet, he's indeed free. As long as it's not written on a hat or an ornament. So what do you see? You see from here that if something is engraved, seemingly it is called ksaf. Amar ulamar avalazar loy kasha ha dechak tuchais ha dechak yirichais. There's different ways of engraving something, says the Gemara. Ha dechak tuchais. One is where you chiseled out the interior, and now the area that around where you chiseled, the letters appeared. So did you actually chisel out those letters? No. You chiseled around the letter, and what's left is the letter. So that's not called iksav, says the Gemara. But one is where you did the opposite. You hollowed out the legs, meaning you actually created the letters, then it would be good. Says the Gemara, v'tuchais loy. Really, if you chiseled out the inside and now the letters remain, that's not good. For Reminu, I'll ask you a stira, the tzitz of the Kohen Gadol, they will not write shakua, they will not write it depressed into the gold. Ela boilate, rather it would be sticking out kidinari zav, like a golden coin. Ask the Gemara of a dinari zav tuchaisein. What was a dinar of zav? It was that the letters were popping out. But how was it popping out? It was popping out by pressing down around it. So we see if I press down around it and thereby the letters come popping out, seemingly it is called iksav, as you can write the tzitz this way. Explains the Gemara, kidinizari zav, lo kidinari zav. It's similar to golden dinar, but not 100%. Kidinari zav de bailev, lo kidinari zav dilu hasam, by the golden coins tuchais. Indeed, they would press around the outside and make the image of the coin pop out, but hacha yirichais. By the tzitz, they would push it from the other side. Therefore, it was an actual ksav that was made popping out. 5 lines from the bottom. Amalei Ravina Ravashmi says Ravina Tarashi Rushma Michratz Charetz. The Roisham, they used to, the way they would make a coin is they would make a stamp. They would make a mold. So does the mold indent? Oy Kenufe Miknif. Or does the mold actually press around and thereby create the letters? How is this mold created? And what's the difference? Who cares how the mold for coins are created? So Rashi throws in over here, about 5 lines from the bottom, says Rashi, the nafkamina of this conversation is, let's say you do the same thing for a get. You want to write a get, and the sefer wants to save some time, so it creates a mold of the entire language of the get. So how is the coins created? Would this be considered a ksav, a writing, or not? Amar lei. So you respond, Rav Ashi, michratz charetz. It is indeed creates it that it pushes out, and therefore it would, the opposite. It indents it in, therefore it's not a good get. Esvei asked the Gemara 1 second again from the tzitz. And if you're going to tell me that the way that it is that it pushes it in, but you need, as we turn over to Chaf Amid Beis, it has to be a writing, and that's not called written at all. So explains the Gemara, what's going on over here, says the Gemara. Says the Gemara, Kinizar Rizav, lo Kedin Rizav, a similar Taretz Chavam Beis. Kedin Rizav, debilate. That was from the outside. This is made from the other side, as we mentioned, allowing the letters to actually be sticking out. That is the discussion of if one would chisel, if one would cause the get to be written on such a scenario. Continues the Gemara, a similar case of engraving. 4 lines down, Chava Mebis. Let's say you write a get in a golden plate. And he tells his wife, his kabli gitich, here's your get, and his kabli ksubasich. And guess what? The get is written on a piece of gold, so the piece of gold should be your ksuba. This is how I'm paying your ksuba. Ma'u, what is the halacha? Amar Lei responds, niskabla gita, niskabla ksubasa. Indeed, it functions as both. If someone says, accept your get, and the remainder of this golden part of it, the remainder area should be your ksuba, niskab legita, vashar liksuba, so that's the din, that it is a good get, and whatever is not the get written on, that is the ksuba. But the Gemara's mentayik time with dikashar sounds like the only reason why it's good is because it's some blank area that he's accepting as a ksuba. Holekashar loy, but if there's in a blank area, then it won't work. Answers the Gemara, who I didn't have gav to like kashar, really it's the same halacha. Vakamash and afal gav dikashar, the chiddush is that even though there's something remainder, I amar la in. Eloi, my time avira de megiltahu. Meaning, maybe you would think if I write a get in $100 bill, so maybe automatically I'm giving her $100. So automatically it should be called that she got her ksuba. Similarly, if there's some blank part of this golden piece of whatever that has the ksuba written on, maybe automatically it should be called that I gave her the ksuba. Says the Gemara, that's the chiddush, that it's only a ksuba if he said that it should be the ksuba. Tanarabanan continues the Gemara. What if the husband says every day, Gittin, Vaniyar Sheli, about 13 lines down, first line is who? If the husband says, here's your gap, but the paper is mine, Eina Migureshes. No, it doesn't work. Amanashe Tachziri Liyas Anayar. If the husband says, here's your get on condition that you return the paper to me, then Harezu Migresh, then it does work. So, Rav Papa, Bein Shita Lashita, Bein Teva Lateva Mai. What if the husband says, I want to keep the area between the words, the area between the lines? Says Gemara Teiku, good Shiloh, we don't know the answer. Says Gemara, why did you not know the answer? That if all the areas between the words and between the lines belong to the husband, then the woman receives a 55 teeny little piece of paper. And it's not Sefer Echad. Says the Gemara, no, that all the parts of the word are connected, like you see sometimes on something that's engraved, you see like the little thread that connects to the next word. So says the Gemara, that's the case over here, that it's going to be partially attached, and therefore it is indeed one sefer, and that's the reason why the Gemara was asking what the story is. Continues the Gemara, and with this we conclude. There was an Avid, a slave that everyone knows is the husband, and then the get kasav al yadai, and there's a get that's written on his hand, meaning there's on his hand there's a get written. And one day this Eved, this slave, is found in the possession of this woman, of his wife. Is she divorced? Ma'u. Mi amrinon, do we say that the husband gave her the Eved with the get written on him, so she is divorced? Aldilma, no. Maybe we say that this Eved on his own walked over to this woman, so it doesn't show anything that she is divorced. Amar Rava, 1 second. We have a different issue, says Rava. Why don't we say writing the get on the hand of an Eved is an issue because you could forge it? Who? Says the Gemara, 1 second, and this should bother everyone. Who the Rava Kasha Mas Nissan? What about our Mishnah? Aliyat Shalevin. It said you could write a get on the hand of an Eved. So Bishal Mas Nissan Rava Loy Kasha, says the Gemara. That's not a Kasha. Why not? Beidim Esir of Rav Elazar. We can say that the reason why I worked in the Mishnah is because there's Eidim that witnessed the giving of the get. Elaram Rachama Kasha. Says the Gemara, no problem. You know why the get on the Eved's hand should be good? Could be good. Peksuvas kaka. It's a tattoo that can't be forged. Says the Gemara, now that you're telling me this interesting case, I'll say the same thing according to Rava. How are we going to learn the Mishnah? Peksuvas kaka. That as well, it could be a case of a tattoo and not the deredi mesira. Givaldik. Says the Gemara, Tachlis, is this woman divorced? Allah, this woman that has to have an observed procession, she called divorced. Tashema answers the Gemara, animals do not have a chazaka, movable items do not have a chazaka, and the fact that this Eved is now in the possession of the woman does not prove that the husband gave this Eved. Maybe the Eved just walked on his own, therefore this woman would not be divorced. We'll pick it up from the Shayla of Rami Racham in the next year, B'siyata Dishmaya.